It seems that the silly season stuff got spread out over the course of 2024, and it certainly kept me busy, but this year the silly stuff has been, well, a little bit quiet by comparison. Can President Sulliam say something completely unhinged so I can get some clicks, please? But it really has been quiet this season, hasn't it? Aside from the Verstappen rumours that went quiet quick and then the sacking of Christian Horner, we've not had that much to play with in terms of the speculation game or anything else that was going on. I guess it does serve two purposes. Number one, it keeps rampant speculation to a minimum, which means the clickbait YouTube channels and websites won't get what they want, which is clicks that they've baited people into doing. But on the other hand, the legit outlets need something to do. Maybe I do need to start doing more list videos. But it seems now that Cadillac is on the cusp of signing its first two drivers, and those two drivers are supposed to be Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas. Now notice how I said on the cusp and Cadillac and not Andretti here, because for one, they haven't been signed yet, although it's expected that they will sign, and also, things were moved around a bit in the March of last year, when Cadillac got its entry approved. Now as a recap, you might have been aware that Andretti had initially been declined onto the Formula 1 grid as the elusive 11th team, because apparently they weren't bringing much in terms of value to the grid. And that upset a lot of people, particularly on the other side of the Atlantic. Because, as a lot of American motorsport fans were quick to point out, it's Andretti. It's American motorsport royalty. That's like IndyCar saying no to Ferrari and us Europeans going, but it's Ferrari. Or Peugeot trying to enter NASCAR and us going, but it's Peugeot. Actually, no, that's not a good example. But imagine a Peugeot 508 with a big block V8 motor. Well, it'd have to be a Dodge, wouldn't it? But anyway, Formula 1's reasoning was it did more for the Andretti brand than it did for Formula 1. And once again, that's one for debate in the comments. The plan was for Andretti to be on the grid, supported and bankrolled by Cadillac, or GM, who already run cars in the World Endurance Championship and the IMSA series. But Formula 1 didn't totally shut the door in Andretti's face, because they said the door would still be open for a potential entry in 2028, so there was that. It would also give the team longer to prepare, which is also good, but Formula 1 was concerned about the fact that for a start, the team would be using customer engines for a bit, and then using their own engines. Part of the argument was that Andretti and Cadillac would have somebody else's engine, be that Renault, Mercedes, Ferrari or Honda, and then over time reverse engineer that engine into their own engine, and that would be a bit of a grey area with regards to the intellectual property of said engine, but I don't know. Then there was the inevitable, but what about Williams? But what about Sauber? But what about Visa credit card contactless payment energy balls? What about Haas? All those teams entered under the old management of Bernie Ecclestone, in a different time, under different rules. Haas entered in 2016 and in part stopped the grid being reduced to 18 runners with the demise of Manor. Credit Cards R Us entered in 2006 after Red Bull bought Minardi. Sauber entered back in 1993 before the majority of the Drive to Survive audience was even born, and Williams predate the Concord Agreement by 5 years or so. Even longer if you factor in the Frank Williams Racing Cars days before he was bought out by Walter Wolf. Essentially, what this is expecting the usual lock-in after last orders in the pub, but instead, the owners kick you out the second match of the day finishes. But Dave and Joyce used to. Yeah, that was Dave and Joyce. This is Martin, and Martin's an arsehole. So now you're probably thinking, cool, that's that, so what made Formula 1 change its mind? At the end of November 2024, so 10 months or so after Andretti was initially rejected, Formula 1 entered an agreement in principle with General Motors for Cadillac to enter the sport instead of Andretti. It came after Michael Andretti, the boss of the Andretti Empire, stepped down from his position at the head of the team, and the whole thing was handed over to Dan Tauris, who I've been referring to as the Gamebridge guy. Gamebridge being the sponsor on the side of Colton Herta's car in IndyCar, but he's also involved with Delaware Life and a couple of the other companies on the side of Andretti IndyCars. There's also been reports that during the bid to get on the grid, Michael Andretti had rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But there was a big shift all around at the same time in not just IndyCar and Andretti, but in Formula 1 too. Because Andretti stepped back, Tauris took over, Greg Maffei stepped down as the Liberty Media CEO, and Renault announced it was canning the engine supply all around the same time. GM then took over as the face of the Andretti team, and then Formula 1 changed its tune. It then agreed on Cadillac coming in, but at a price. £350 million. To put that into context, Andrea Sassetti paid £100,000 to get his team onto the grid for the 1992 season. That is, if he ever paid that entry fee. Even with inflation, that's still shy of £250,000. Insane amounts to get into Formula 1 these days. So, this is now GM's project, being run under the Cadillac name. And a team based out of Mexico was supposed to enter Formula 1 in the early 1990s backed by Lamborghini, but the project folded, and Lamborghini simply picked up and entered the leftovers. So this isn't exactly a unique situation. I guess you could throw the HRT team in there as well, because that was supposed to be Campos, but with buyouts and so on, it became HRT, but I think you get the picture. So hopefully that's got you all caught up and refreshed on how we get to this point, and I've tried to keep it all brief. The next question is, why has Cadillac picked up two so-called F1 rejects, and not the ones you'd find on that awesome yet defunct website? Because, quite simply, why wouldn't you? By picking up Perez and Bottas, Cadillac has got access to a combined 527 starts and 16 wins between them. Okay, that's not as impressive as them signing Hamilton and Verstappen in terms of combined winnage, but the two of them have got a raft of experience of driving at the front and the back of the grid. As much as people wanted to run they're not letting Andretti in because the Europeans are scared they'll be beaten by Yanks thing, that's actually not going to be too much of a problem. Not only is the F1 world expecting Cadillac to be at the back, Cadillac should expect Cadillac to be at the back. Hey, that rhymes. Because of the short turnaround they've had, maybe 2028 would have been a better idea after all, so they were truly ready. But since their application to be on the grid was accepted in November of last year, which gives them 14 months to build, test and run a car competitively, it's going to be a hard slog. And while Perez is memed relentlessly for his 2024 season, you have to remember all the heroics he pulled off at Sauber, Racing Point and Force India. Their first year with the short turnaround time is likely to be painful. In the race's little bit that they did on Friday, was it? They said don't be surprised if the gap to the next fastest car is a decent one. It might not be 2021 Haas levels of bad, but still, Bottas and Perez have got the experience that will be way more valuable than having a rookie on the grid. They know their way around a car, and their feedback will be invaluable, and they've got over 500 races worth of experience. Sure, they're not the most successful guys in the world, but out of the current batch of F1 drivers, only Hamilton and Alonso have more races under their belt. And as much as people will hate seeing these names return instead of fresh blood coming onto the grid, from a management perspective, it makes total sense. But shouldn't they have an American driver? Well, I mean, technically they do have an American driver already. Assuming they sign him. Okay, Perez isn't United States of American, but he's North American, and that's good enough. It would be good for GM marketing in Mexico at least, and Bottas, while definitely not American, even though he does look like an American, will have spent last season in the Mercedes simulator and analysing Mercedes data. While Mercedes isn't the best car on the grid, and the customer team is doing better than them right now, it's all useful and recent data to have on hand. Cadillac can't afford to be clever, nor can it afford to have unproven talent in the car. Plus, really, who else is there? Looking at who has been snapped up for next season, there's only a handful of seats left. Neither of the two Mercedes drivers have been signed as of yet, although it's assumed that at least one of them will be Russell, with the other likely to be Antonelli. There's also a second Red Bull seat available, if anybody actually wants it, and there's two VCARB seats up for grabs and a second seat at Alpine. They're not getting anybody with any experience of this year, but then again it's all going to be reset for next year anyway, so it's not like they're losing out too much. I suppose there's the prospect of looking to somebody who is maybe a tad younger. I'm sure there were people out there hoping for a team up of Danny Rick, a certified Yankee file, and Mick Schumacher, a driver that no team wanted last year and is now racing hypercars in the WEC. Other than being an F2 winner and the son of Michael Schumacher, what is there in terms of a case for Mick being on the grid? Maybe he could have his real rookie season. Again, if having a crap car means that you don't have your real rookie season, then 2022 was George Russell's true rookie season. He won a race that year as well. But all snark aside, Mick as a simulator and reserve driver could be an option. But then again, old semi-retired drivers are the target audience for Cadillac, so it all adds up. I really wish I could take credit for that joke, but it's not mine. But once Cadillac has the basis down and they've found their footing, that's when they can start looking for younger drivers with a longer shelf life. Bottas and Checo are 35 years old, so they've got 2, maybe 3 years at most in them, depending on how they go. Hulkenberg's still going at his age, so there's no reason that they shouldn't. But it's who they will go for, That's the real question. Colton Herta will no doubt be trying to shove his way to the front of the queue because he's wanted a crack at Formula 1 for a long time and has been disappointed on numerous occasions when they won't give him a super license, when they allowed Antonelli to have one at the age of 17. Is it all about the European superiority complex? Not at all. It's that Herta is never at the pointy end of the IndyCar standings, so he's not going to get one. But then again, Sebastian Loeb never got one either. Yeah, I know. The two most likely to come over, in my opinion at least, would be Alex Palou, who is dominating IndyCar right now, and Patricio O'Ward. Now there are some downsides to this. Number one being that Palou is tied to Chip Ganassi and Pato is contracted to McLaren, but GM has got enough money in the bank to make it happen. Pato is extremely popular in Mexico, even if there have been claims to the contrary if you've seen them, and Palou has shown this season that maybe he's a bit too good for IndyCar with how many wins he's had this year. 8. More than everybody else combined. And actually, looking at it, the one with the next amount of wins is actually Kyle Kirkwood, driving for Andretti. But Andretti would likely want a full-up American driver at some point. At least, you'd think so. Mercedes went for an all-German lineup in the early days, BMW wanted a German driver, Audi will have Hülkenberg next year and might want another German driver after he retires, but you never know. It would also be good for the team that wants to be all-American to have an American driver. But again, who? Is there anybody that's good enough to fill that role? And that's a genuine question, by the way, as much as I want to meme around because lol F1 versus IndyCar. I think they're going to have to either go for an F1 reject in terms of not being picked up by one of the other 10 teams, or somebody from the juniors. Jack Crawford. He's American, isn't he? And I keep forgetting that he's American, and he's currently second in Formula 2. He might be worth picking up, if Aston will let him go, that is. But that's not to say that there isn't any talent in the juniors wanting to come up. Alex Dunn caused quite the stir when he had his first run in an F1 car in Austria, and the way some Irish lads I know were getting excited, you'd think that he'd won the race. But then, I don't blame them, because the last driver from the Republic was, let me check my notes here, Ralph Furman. But it seems that while he might be available, from what I gather, Cadillac never spoke to Dunn. But that doesn't mean that something might not come up in the future, again, when Cadillac finds its feet. But it's not like Cadillac hasn't been looking to the junior categories at all, because they did have a look, but it seems that this is the most logical way to go, at least from their standpoint. As the pro journos have pointed out, Hülkenberg and Bortoleto is proof that experience plus youth can work, but Sauber has been around for the best part of 3 decades, so they know what they're doing. The race also pointed out that having a race winner around for the start of the new chapter has also been done a few times before, like Villeneuve being there for the beginning of BAR, and Kovalainen and Trulli being a lineup of race winners when Lotus came in for 2010, which actually might be the only time that's happened, where both the drivers for a brand new team have been race winners. So there would have been an opening for Drugovich, who has been sat on the sidelines for what seems like an eternity at Aston because of Alonso and Stroll being there, and there's Paul Aron at Alpine, Doohan also at Alpine, and yes, Mick Schumacher. But like mentioned, Sauber transitioning into Audi is one thing, and setting up something from scratch is something else entirely. Like I keep saying, if a solution pitch starts with just, then it usually isn't that simple. And one thing that's also been mentioned by the pro journalists is that Sauber will have access to testing of a previous car, or at least Audi will. Cadillac won't. But the FIA's rules do allow for a new team to borrow one if another team allows it. Would Haas allow them to do it? Probably not. And yeah, sure, picking Bottas and Perez isn't exactly exciting. Two 35 going on 36-year-olds who were secondary to multiple World Championship winning teammates who then became megastars of the sport isn't going to fill fans with any excitement of what is to come. But it's a necessary evil. Formula 1 cares not for nostalgia, or last names, or the fact that you like this particular driver because he's funny and he smiles a lot, like Spot the dog. And Cadillac doesn't seem to care for that either. They're running an operation that is bloody expensive, even with the cost caps, and GM has spent a lot of money to get this team onto the grid. They're not going to faff about with a driver because his dad was a 91-time Grand Prix winner, or this guy because the fans think he's quirky. They've had to go for the necessary evil. Much like Eddie Jordan put those team orders in at Spa in 1998 because the 1-2 was more important. Not because he wanted Damon to win or because he hated Ralph. Jordan winning was the important bit. It got his title sponsors and his engine supplier off his back. It also helps that Perez is very, 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 very good friends with Carlos Slim, a man that makes Lawrence Stroll look like he's on minimum wage. But looking through the comment sections, a lot of people do seem to think that this is a boring choice. This driver pairing is vanilla ice cream, a cheese and tomato pizza, a ham sandwich, and some journalists have been lamenting the lack of risks taken. But trundling around at the back isn't going to do anything for a rookie. At the same time, there's no unlimited testing anymore. They can't just pound around tracks until the car is good. And if there's a rookie trashing the car every race because the car is undrivable for that rookie, what good is it going to do? Is it the safest pair of hands? Probably not. Is it the safest they can get right now? Yes. And it's two drivers who, on their day, have done some mega things in Formula 1 cars. The Williams cars for Bottas and the Saubers and Team Silverstone cars for Checo, ignoring the fact that they had OP Mercs and Red Bulls. And Perez has been the better in mid-tier cars, it has to be said, but then again he spent longer in mid-tier cars. He got that second place at Malaysia in 2012, and he did some other great things in that Sauber through being a tyre whisperer in a year where the Pirelli tyres were made of wet toilet paper. And then he went to Force India, where he did all that stuff again. In his Sauber, Force India and Racing Point career, he notched up 9 podiums, and then won the 2020 Sakir Grand Prix. But then again, he only won that because Mercedes screwed George Russell to stop Hamilton looking like a car merchant. That's the only reason Checo won. I do love F1 conspiracy theories. They're stupid, but I love them. But before he went to Red Bull, Perez was a very dependable driver. There's really only that 2013 season where he let himself down, overdriving and everything else. And just to hammer the point home, if you took Checo's career from when he debuted in 2011 up until he joined Red Bull for the start of 2021, there were only 3 seasons in which he didn't score a podium, those being 2011, 2013 and 2019. In all the other seasons, he was on the podium at least once, in Saubers, Force Indias and Racing Points. Bottas, on the other hand, before he went to Mercedes, had a 3rd place qualifying position in 2013 in Canada, in a Williams that wasn't exactly up for it. And then in 2014, things picked up, and he also achieved 9 podiums in the period between 2014 and 2016. But when he went to Mercedes, he showed that on his day, he could get the better of Hamilton, Vettel and Raikkonen. What would be absolutely hilarious right now is that everybody's made all of these videos for it to turn out that Cadillac has hired somebody else instead. But either way, what do you think? Is this a good plan, or should they do something completely different? Let me know down in the comments and get a bit of a discussion going. So then, a look at the Cadillac team that looks like it's about to sign its drivers for 2026. If you think this video made some good points, then you can like the video to show your appreciation, or if you otherwise think I said some good things. And there's a subscribe button there too if you haven't already clicked it, along with a bell you can ring so you never miss out on anything else that I do around here. Massive thanks as ever go out to the mad lads over at Patreon for the continued support, and if you want to help with image purchasing or keeping the lights on around here, there's a link to Patreon down in the description, along with links to Discord, socials, affiliates and any other bits and pieces you might want or need to know. Well, there's super thanks for any one and done donations and memberships so you can Patreon without the Patreon. So until next time, I've been Aidan Millward, have a great day wherever you are, and goodbye.